fits in with this round of the North Carolina Green Business Month. And it's a focus it's a collaborative effort with Clearwater Enterprises that's going to focus in White Lake. And Layton County is huge as far as its hog industry. And that's a multi-billion-dollar industry for North Carolina. So if we're talking the economics, and we really want to help North Carolina economics, focusing on hogways is huge. And this is focusing on covering the hog lagoons and sequestering the methane that's coming off of it, being able to utilize that as either a fuel source directly for the hog farmer or flaring it to grid. That carbon dioxide that's coming off of that process can also go into culturing the algae in these closed systems and being able to put it in. A lot of the lagoons have been closed down because of the moratorium, so they actually have some extra lagoons out there that aren't being used for the hog waste. And so what we're finding in our research is that you've got to dilute that down. It's really rich in nutrients. The problem is it's too rich in nutrients. And so you can actually use these secondary ponds in culturing the algae. And that's a lot of the premise that we're working on with that grant proposal. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed. However, the Green Business Fund, saying that, has changed over to stimulus funding, which is through the Department of Energy. And different guidelines have been put on that. And so they've actually held off the announcement, as I think somebody mentioned here with your grant, till September in trying to meet those DOE guidelines. So I'm not sure how well our proposal is going to meet those guidelines and be able to move forward, but it's definitely a focus.
You have a question?
Yeah, would you say that there's greater potential in our region for either duckweed or algae, and is that dependent on whether or not they'd be more smaller or larger scale entities?
Both.
So I'm sorry, the question is, do you think which would work better, duckweed or algae?
Is there more potential for one or the other, or is this going to be just
I think it's a multi-pronged approach because you've got the duckweed that you're focusing on the starches and carbohydrates that's going towards ethanol, and then the majority of algae research is focused on the lipids and going towards biodiesel. And so it really looks at your end product. I really believe some other biofuels are really important too, to think of biobutanol as some of the products. And so that's going to depend on the feedstock that you're focusing on.
So both have potential here. We're talking about the lower Cape Fear, like they both have potential here. They both have really high potential here. But yeah, again, it would probably be both. I mean, the scale, I don't know what the scalability is of duckweed. I mean, again, it all gets back to scale because this is all economics. I mean, we all want to do the right thing and we all want to, use all of our resources. But when it gets right down to it, you have to be funded to do anything, to just make a phone call, to send out a fax. You have to be, all the things it takes to do business, you have to be funded. And so for me, I think that, I don't know enough about the scalability of duckweed, but I know algae can be scaled up, and I know that there are people here currently working on it. So that may have a little bit more of a thrust because of that, but that's not to diminish the validity of duckweed.
Yeah, it's definitely both. They're two different fuels.
Yeah, exactly.
You're always going to have the use of a diesel engine, and to make diesel fuel from a bio-based product, you need oil. And there's only so many plants that actually store their energy in oil, and algae is number one. It's just not common for a plant to store a whole lot of energy in oil format. A lot of plants do store energy in sugars and starches, but that's making it a completely different fuel. So definitely need both of them. But you do need ethanol to make biodiesel.
Yeah.
Or methanol.
Yeah, methanol.
That can be derived from.
Yeah. Well, ethanol is more bio-based, yeah.
And just a naive assessment, that duckweed is actually surface plant.
Yep.
And algae, you can do different yields duckweed because it pervades.
You can move the water column. You actually try to circulate it and expose as much to the sunlight as possible, so you do have a little bit more media.
Right.
Matt, on the duckweed, did you actually pilot it, or did you feel what the yields would be? You were saying it's like 6 times the starch level of corn. So as you bring it in, is there a shelf life initially, like with different agricultural crops? There's a very short shelf life because it's so wet until it's dry.
Right, and most yields are measured in dry matter, and like the bag of algae that's going around, it takes a lot of dry matter just to get a little bit of your finished fuel.
And the dry matter is a big part of the bottom line too. Just get back to the business side of it. I mean, you really make more money out of the dry algae than you do out of the actual oil.
I can't give you like specific numbers right off the top of my head.
Has it been piloted, or is it?
A really good study was done by NC State, and that was
Jay
part
Chang.
of the Biofuels Center of North Carolina grant. And I believe there's been a report that's put out there that's public information that gives you a lot of the numbers, really nice numbers on Duckweed.
In the last 3 years, the Biotechnology Center at RTP opened a biofuels center. I don't know if we've talked about that at all, but in Oxford, yeah, and so North Carolina is very, poised to really make this a reality, I think. I mean,
And the Biofuels Center, on their website, they list 10 different biofuels that they're really looking at. And one we haven't talked about at all tonight is the pulp resource in North Carolina. We have so much of it, but the thing is, it's cellulosic, which means it takes an extra couple steps to get that material broken down into something that the yeast can digest.
Piedmont was just open that, Novozymes.
Yeah, Novozymes is the closest. They make these nitrates into fertilizer, and that's what they do. So definitely look at the energy balance. No biofuel is the same. I think duckweed is a very positive energy balance because you're not using any new inputs. You're using the existing nutrients that are out there. Same with the algae. So yeah.
Well, I think what Matt's getting at too is rather than a snapshot of something, because you mentioned the low, if not good energy balance of petrochemicals, but that's typically on a snapshot basis, and same thing's true for nuclear power and so many other conventional power sources. They do a snapshot of this one little slice of what you're looking at, but if you look at the before and the after, especially with the cleanup of those sorts of facilities and that kind of thing, the cost is astronomical. Yeah, it's impossible, or it's astronomical, or what, so if you look at the whole life cycle assessment of the entire thing, I think you get a better.
I have one more thing too, with the Alganomics, for how you're talking about micro algae, you're talking about using the diatoms and everything, so how does that work? How do you take that and use it? I don't understand how you can take that. I mean, I understand how it's broken down.
They're literally just like a small plant. And so they store energy in different capacities, typically as carbohydrates or as lipids. And so the hard part is getting cultures that are high in the lipids if you're focused on biodiesel. And so you're really trying to pick species that produce a lot of lipids or store a lot of lipids. Species would be anything from chlorella to Hematococcus. There's just literally thousands and thousands of species of algae. And so there's just a tremendous amount of research right now to find the magic algae that will do it. And then there's another whole venue of research that's to genetically modify algae that we know are already fairly high. How can we modify to improve them? And so there's a tremendous amount of research to find that magic, either monoculture or polyculture, that produces a lot of lipids. And so it may be that it produces a small amount of lipids, but you can stress it in some capacity. And to stress it might be to reduce its nutrients, like its nitrogen level. And it's kind of like humans, where we store a little bit extra fat, when we're piling up for the winter there. The plant species do the same thing with algae, and so they increase their lipid percent, and that would be the optimal time to harvest. And so you're literally trying to burst the cells and let them release the oils that are in there.
Is there any research on I know there's a giant green algae forests in the oceans and along the coast of California and everything? Do they use anything with those? Do you know anything about that?
The kelp forest, which is a type of algae, they're not high lipid.
They're more carbohydrates, and there's a lot of concern about if we're pulling those out of environmentally sensitive areas, are we not doing more damage to culture those? Yeah,
they're there for a reason. Yeah.
But kelp farming does exist from suspended human-made structures that are put in.
Yeah. Our algae is really good too, because you can in an acre, it's really more than an acre because it's actually in cubic feet because you can go up.
Sure.
So in an acre, whereas the duckweed, that's more just on a basic.
Right, and that is a limiting problem with the duckweed. You need a flat surface.
And with that, you can go. How tall can you go? We can get the actual amount of
sunlight's your limiting
Yes.
factor, so you've only got a depth of anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, depending on water quality and lots of other issues, that you've actually got sunlight penetration. And so you can actually get too much sunlight with algae. You can photo bleach them. But ideally, if you're in a controlled situation, you're trying to get a circulation pattern that's going to take some of the algae that's on the bottom and the deeper layers and give them exposure to the sunlight for a period of time and then rotate them back down. So all kinds of research that's debating what's the optimal depth. Most of the raceway ponds